Hello, Lisa Starr. So good to see you again.
Hi, Alon.
Hello. So we're connecting from the opposite sides of the planet to broadcast to our communities and our listeners and combine our wisdoms as we are about to begin a brand new year according to the 13 moon calendar, which you are personally have been living by for 26 years now, and I've been working on learning for the past years, and in particularly in the past year. And I'm very excited a new year is beginning because I really have been living according to these years and really feeling and seeing and synchronizing with them from the very beginning. I was exposed to the wisdom of natural time and Mayan wisdom. And so for me to have you as a partner, colleague, to talk these things together out loud and to be able to share our perspectives together and give some heads up and practical guidance for people that value what we our wisdom in this world. It's a really, really a very big blessing and privilege for me. So I'm really excited to be here with you.
Excited about it being New Year's
Yeah,
for the select people that feel that way because of their interest in the calendar.
yes. So it indeed feels like New Year's, and maybe for the beginning, we'll refer a bit to why this is actually a new year. I mean, in which form or calendar or perspective does this new year show up for us, and how could it be that the both of us see this new year and really experience this as reality? Because maybe for our new listeners, or even for our ongoing listeners, it's really interesting that we as individuals can hold different perspectives of time and live according to them and really experience our lives according to them, but they're not a conventional way of looking at things. They're not the Gregorian calendar, of course. And, I come from a Hebrew, Jewish background. We also have a calendar. It's not this calendar, even though you can find synchronicities between these calendars, between the three of them, definitely. But there's some very profound and clear energetic peak happening in this time of the year for us, especially in the northern hemisphere, but also on the opposite side on the southern hemisphere. So we can also flip the planet upside down and recognize that there is an element of new happening also on the southern hemisphere of the planet. So maybe we can begin by me asking you, so what is this galactic new year? And why do you think or understand that it is relevant and real in this time, in this world we live in right now?
Okay, well, I'm someone who has always rejected about half the new age slash science fiction terms that came with Jose Arguelles's version of the Mayan teachings. So I don't think I've ever been able to say like it's a galactic new year. And no problem if that's comfortable to others. But like I end up calling it a Mayan New Year, and I'm comfortable with the actual historic truth about the way the Maya celebrated their annual renewal, that it is now, and that it's not appropriation to just acknowledge that that's why the year begins now, that that was their decision. So like I call it a Mayan New Year or the natural time New Year or the 13 moon New Year. So those are a lot of different terms, and I keep it loose because I end up feeling like it's just my New Year. It's just my New Year. And what I've written about is that the Maya chose this time, July 26th, because they were so impressed, affected by like celestial happenings that when Sirius, the dog star, which would be like the brightest star in the sky at night, was at the horizon line with the sun at dawn, like it drops right as the sun is rising to that same place where your eye, is watching the sunrise, that was so auspicious that it was the chosen day for starting, the annual calendar. And that it happens to also on the other side of the world, back in these ancient times, to be when the Egyptians had a new year or a start to a calendar. And that might be folklore, but like that's just what I say. Like, why is this the new year? And like, because that's when the Maya were most impressed with this like ominous spectacle in the sky, which is what life was back, before electricity. And then the only other facet is that I like to always underscore that the Gregorian year that starts January 1st is based on nothing directly organic or celestial. It probably is just something that was bastardized from winter solstice over centuries, and that the Roman era, the Roman civilization had a lot to do with making our calendar strange, the Gregorian calendar strange, even though it was Pope Gregory was in like the 1400s. It's like that was just sort of the solidification or the recording of things that had been pushed through history through like leaders who wanted things to have their markings in the calendar. And so just to summarize, like it's an artificial calendar that we all follow, and that's where the name natural time kind of, for me, best expresses what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, yeah. So
So,
thank you for that. That's very clear. I can also add to that from my knowledge that obviously this is in the northern hemisphere, kind of the peak time of the summer. In the north of the planet, they would celebrate this time as the central point of the summer, the most fertile time of the year. And I know that in ancient Egypt, this would also be traditionally a time they were expecting the flood of the Nile River, which would flood the whole areas around the river, which were very fertile land. So they really referred to this time as a kind of a peak, after which they were expecting um, a lot of processes to begin because of this peak. And like you said as well, with the dog days, the hottest days of the summer, and then the dog star shining to reflect this time of the year. And so I think we can agree that naturally, organically, without giving it too much meaning of past stories, we look at the world at this time, especially again, northern and southern hemisphere the same, because in the southern hemisphere it's kind of the peak of the winter. And we recognize that there is a kind of peak timing that's happening in this time. So also for me, on a personal level, from my own personal experience, I can share with our listeners that ever since I was exposed to Mayan wisdom and the wisdom of natural time and the dream spell and the 13 moon calendar by Jose Arquiles, I've really been experiencing the shifting of the years as they were um, taught or given to us in the structure of this synchronicity between the 13 moon calendar and the dream spell calendar. And maybe for our listeners to know that the reason a year is called a year, and we are going to talk about the Yellow Resonant Seed year that's beginning, is because this is the sign that will be in the dream spell calendar on the 26th of July. So Mayan wisdom and the perspective of natural time teaches us that time is in motion. Time is the motion of evolution. It's not just a tool to measure how productive we are in the world or synchronize ourselves with our environments, but it's actually the entire dimension that we exist and develop in. And inside this dimension, there is a natural kind of order, natural cycles that happen, reoccur, but they always reoccur with an element of development. So when we arrive at the 26th of July this year, it will still be the same name of date on the calendar because there has been some kind of a cycle that's happened since the last time we were on this date, but we're actually in a completely different place, right? Because we've experienced an entire year and we've developed a lot. And the year of the Yellow Resonant Seed is teaching us about a time, a year, a process of a cycle of a year that the Yellow Resonant Seed is kind of giving the kickstart to. He's the one saying, "Hey, this is what's going to happen to us this year. This is the process of development we're going to go through in the realm of the Yellow Resonant Seed." So it's actually a very exciting time for me and how I see it for the entire planet, because we're shifting from a year that's ending, the year of the Blue Rhythmic Storm. And maybe we can begin by kind of recapping and summarizing for our listeners what's been happening to us in the past year. What is this process called the Blue Rhythmic Storm that we set off on the 26th of July 2024, and we're now completing this cycle. So maybe I'll hand it to you to share with us how you've been seeing this year, what you were expecting from it. Did this process meet your expectation? Did you even expect anything as a blue storm? Lisa's a blue storm, so this is kind of your realm in my perspective, you know?
Okay, I will, but I'm gonna sort of double down on what you just shared just to clarify or add to that. So basically we're looking at the astrology of July 26th, which is always the beginning of the new calendar year for the Maya, for us. We're looking at it as an astrology, the same way I would look up someone's birthday, or a child might be born on July 26, 2025, and we would be like, oh, they're a yellow resonant seed. So I want to just describe it that way so that again, people understand like, why does the first day matter? It doesn't matter when it's January 1st. But it does matter here because we're astrologers when we follow this calendar. Like basically, we're just putting ourselves in the diagnosis, sort of the seat of always assessing time through the lens of astrology. So this is just a way to explore what a whole year is from the outset. We can almost anticipate it, or we can use it again as a kind of code to walk through the year astrologically. Just keep referring back. It's a yellow resonant seed year this year. And that the reason it changes is the same way those of you who are familiar with, your Gregorian birth date that you then look up in this dream spell or the Zolkin of the Maya, and you get, what your birth astrology is. But then, you're taught along the way that when it's your birthday again, it isn't the same. It's a 260-day cycle, so it happens more frequently than our year birthdays. So that again, that's why July 26th continues to change and has a different character every year. And then the last thing I wanted to say that's kind of reflective backward of how we began is just like, yes, the difference between the conceived Gregorian calendar and the Mayan or Egyptian calendar is that it starts in the height of summer, which is a picture of abundance, of ease, of having enough. Uh, And I think I was thinking about the people that live in the Southern Hemisphere who can now participate, across the internet through, all world cultures at any moment. They kind of live in that duality that it is to follow a Gregorian calendar and the natural time calendar. Like they're like, my winter is, bathing suit weather. So that's fine. You're new, if you follow the Mayan New Year and you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you're sort of like living what the Gregorian experience is, which is January 1st is cold and dark and can be a struggle. And then in ancient times, you would not necessarily have enough. You would be operating from just scrambling to get by. So again, that's the one, I think, important cultural or like resonant difference between the two calendars is that we're starting from a place of ease and we're returning to a place of ease when the year ends and we take this arc through darkness or the demands of winter. So I just needed to unearth all that. And then yes, to clarify, the 4 year markers for this calendar that starts July 26th there can only be four tribes represented, and it's a constant cycle through the tribe Red Moon, then White Wizard, then Blue Storm, and Yellow Seed. And I just mentioned that because my birth astrology is that I'm a Blue Storm. So for better or for worse, every 4 years, I kind of live through the world that we sort of conceive, matching, going through what I, have as a birth struggle or as a birth gift. And Alon is a white mirror, so he doesn't necessarily ever get to have a year marked with his birth energy, but nonetheless, this year will have characteristics of white mirror. So yeah, my last year is a it's a gift. When you drop into your own energy field, it can feel very much like my inside matches the outside world. And I have so much experience being a blue storm that the struggle that this year has been for so many people, the disruption, the extreme challenges societally, I'm like, yeah, I get it. It's not easy to endure a year of blue storm. If you think about it as weather, it wouldn't be easy. And it ends up being like emotional storms, psychological storms, cultural storms, literal climate induced storms of great magnitude as we struggle through climate crisis. And so it can be exhausting and feel relentless. So we get to change soon. That's why I kind of bring it up. It's going to be different in Yellow Seed. I don't know that I ever want to say it's going to be so much better, but it's going to be very different.
Very different indeed, yes. And did you recognize as a blue storm, in particular, qualities of processes that were happening in the world that you kind of definitely recognize from your own life experience?
I think of Blue Storm as essentially existing to eradicate denial.
Hmm.
That there is a mood to white. See, in the order of the Zolkin, Blue Storm follows White Mirror the day after, and that White Mirror part of the struggle is, I think of it as like a weather format, like when the sky is covered with clouds, but it's not really moving. Like we're sort of stuck in this, um, we're prevented from feeling the warmth of the sun or the direct light of the sun. And it can feel like a mood of depression or a mood of confusion. And then Blue Storm is it's going to be so intense in the sky that it explodes all the water molecules gathered there, right? And so I think that Blue Storm exists to kind of force everyone to face their own denial and break through. It's a gift. It allows people to break through. If you're stuck in a cycle of depression or a cycle of not understanding what's happening to you, you get clarity, but it's also very tumultuous, right? In that process of disturbing one's psyche or one's life habits to, allow you to have growth and a new view and maybe more enlightenment because that's what the sun represents when it is returned.
I like that. And I can definitely say I recognize these qualities in the past year. It's been very tumultuous, very shifting, fast, like a storm. It was very, I like to describe the storm as the molding of the four elements. So the wind picks up the water from the ocean and takes it onto the earth. And in this meeting of friction between the wind and the water and the earth, it creates fire, which is the lightning.
Yeah.
And this kind of very intense friction that demands us to move from our comfortable seat because the wind is blowing strong and the water's coming down and the earth is changing face because things are moving on top of the earth so intensely. And then you have the fire which comes out of all these processes of just like a way to burst the energy out into the infinite, into the endlessness, just to keep the balance. And so I really can reflect on everything you said in that level, that this year was definitely full of earth earth-shaking shifts. If we look at it on the collective, universal, global level, but definitely also on the inner personal emotional development level. It's also been very fiery, especially on my side of the world. In the Middle East, there's been maybe the most fire ever in the air, symbolically, but also physically,
Yeah, literally.
literally, exactly. And there's been a lot of emotional purgence and cleansing from a place of no more denial, not possible to be in denial anymore of the processes going inside. And also a lot of spirit, a lot of communication between parts that weren't communicating before, symbolically and literally speaking. And same with us, this storm demanded us to kind of purge and find a way to balance, and this connects with the rhythmic tone, all of this tension and intensity and movement and change and transformation. And I'd like to ask you about the rhythmic tone. So, so the storm was clear, but the rhythmic for me, it's the lunar element. Yeah, it's the 13 moons, the 13 lunar tones. How I perceive it is that it's more like on an inner world level, more on the emotional level, like the dark and the light within us. And I perceive it as more of an inner process. And I wonder how you perceive the rhythmic tone in this year. Like, how did it play out?
Well, I'll learn from you about that because that isn't something I have considered before, that like one could be more the sun and the obvious, like the tribe of the year or the day could be the sun and the tone is more subtle or internal. Like I think that I have a pragmatism where I just think that the rhythmic tone can be hard to understand in a way because it is a bit banal. Like a I think when we arrive at the rhythmic tone in the order of 13, it's teaching us to be like organized humans or almost like machines. I mean, not truly something industrial, but just that rhythm, the characteristic of rhythm is creating a rhythm and a balance or a meeting out your life in a way that it isn't like all over the place or a surge and then you fall back in exhaustion. Like it teaches us and it allows us, it gives us the framework to be steady. And I think it exists in the 13 in order of the 13 so that right after the overtone, the the tone before it, overtone is like this blast of power and force that you kind of summon from inside or are fed from the cosmos, and it's like bursting popcorn. You just have all of this firework energy, and then the rhythmic comes along right behind it so that that doesn't just go all over or get expended really quickly, that it teaches us how to do things in a way that are sustainable because the process of growth in a cycle of 13, we need to sustain our power or our energy. So I guess I experience it very much on a personality level. So that would be external more than internal, is just like being able to have a year where I am so organized, meaning I self-taught how to just keep steady and
Mm,
noticed how um again supported by this calendar. Like I wasn't doing it. I was just like held by the rhythmic
mm.
tone to just stay on track and not fall away or give up. So that's how I experienced it.
That's a really beautiful analogy, and I think it's really beautiful how you how both of our perspectives combine.
Mhm.
It's like the rhythmic tone kind of gave you an inner stability that you've been learning through the year and created or learned within yourself. And the storm was the way to get there.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, a rhythmic storm year would be easier than like a lunar storm year, which is the last storm year we had. Like,
Yeah, 2020, 21.
yeah. I want to say, like, sometimes at the end of the year I get kind of sad or scared, like, but I'm so organized, meaning like I have daily habits that I uphold, like when you always dream, like if I would just sit and meditate every day, but it's so hard. Like I have examples of that in my own life where I'm just so good at doing things cyclically and repeatedly. And I'm like, what if that's only the rhythmic year and then I won't have it anymore? So usually we get to kind of build on what we've created. It's still going to be there, it just evolves.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with that. And one of the beautiful aspects of this calendar for me is that it's not linear, so it's not like beginning end, that's finished, that's finished. It's talking about a movement of evolution that's spiral in its natural motion. So everything is built on top of the other, but it's not like building a building and then building another floor and then building another floor. It's more like it's way more vast than that. It's like the lessons that we accumulate through life, we don't forget them when we start a new phase. The new phase is built on these lessons, so we're definitely not losing wisdom. We just keep gaining wisdom from the experience of going through the cycles, and the perspective of the Mayan perspective really, for me as a white mirror, it gives order. It gives the ability to call things by their name and realize them in existence, and like you said, kind of find this inner place you can lean on and not fall off track even when things get very, very, very intense or unexpected, or really moving us from what we know is familiar. And maybe I'll add from my perspective about the rhythmic storm year. So when we entered this year, I was anticipating the storm definitely from past years' experience. The storm years were I mean, 2012 was a resonant storm year. And for those of us awake to this kind of planetary shift, existential shift we're currently experiencing, sorry, 2012 for many of us was like the catalyst year where it all began. And so we're exactly 13 years after that year, entering a resonant year once again. And so the rhythmic storm year, for me and my perspective, it was really like the clearing out of everything that needed to be washed out of my system. And of course, not everything got washed. Something just started coming up to the surface, and within the next upcoming period of life will start to form into reality that I can process. But I was really anticipating that this year will be moving us physically from places that we were used to finding ourselves in again and again on a personal and global level. I think this is probably the year that the most humans have been mobilized from their familiar surroundings, probably since the world wars. This is like a big time of real motion on the planet for many people, and ongoing. I mean, it's just growing at the moment, from the wars, from the natural disasters, from the crises that were showing up in different places in the planet over the year. And at the same time, I was really recognizing how every little storm that I experienced through the year was really helping me to find stability in my inner world, and really kind of helping me to find the rhythm in which I can exist within the harshest of conditions, and to find this place within that's balanced even when everything around is changing. And I guess for each one of us, this lesson showed up the way it should have for each one of us. But I know from my experience and from many others, and of course from observing planetary events, that this year took us as blue storm years due to the extremes, but it also really helped us find a way that we can be, that can help us deal with the upcoming changes that we're facing, that will definitely be showing up in a yellow seed year. Yellow seed, like its name, it's a time of on the one hand bursting potentials through the shell, like seed sprouting. But the yellow seed, according to Jose Willis, is also talking about awareness,
Mhm.
to be aware of what's already happening within us. So there's also this form of the seed popping in our own consciousness, like new idea. I've never thought about this before, or I've thought about it many times, and now it's starting to formulate into something concrete that could actually happen. But before I jump into that, I want to pass the mic back to you. If there's anything you want to add or say about anything that I brought up here.
Well, I just always like to, it's like a, what do you call that? Like a side, an asterisk when Alon and I communicate. Yes, when I started following this calendar, I was so much younger. It's been essentially half my life, right? So I go all the way back in time to my thoughts of what I was like when I was 30 years old and a mother of young children in a totally pre-internet experience. And I was just like way more confident that you could kind of like change life through prayer and ritual. So I just like, I'm so much more cynical. And I don't want it to be as if I know more than anyone else, especially in this conversation. I'm just like, this world is fucked up. And, I don't think of it like, ooh, a new year with new possibility. Like, I just don't go there anymore. And I think I'm becoming like the caricature of like the old person who's like, back when I was young. And I'm very aware of that. Like, I get it. It's kind of what happens to you biologically. And so I'm like very fascinated by being in this process myself. But like, I just can't. And before I'll say one more thing, like I've never been good at new age beliefs where you can kind of visualize it and then it'll happen. Like I find that egotistical just from my perspective. It's another way of saying I'll do what I want and God will or the universe will create it what I want. So anyway, like I just have less harmony when I anticipate that we can move from a very intense year. Societally, I would say I've experienced it personally, but I tend to have intense experiences, maybe as a storm. But societally, a very challenging year. And I don't have any faith that we're going to be like liberated from a lot of that. But it's absolutely true astrologically that to be in a blue storm year is so different than to be in a yellow seed year. And that the blue storm year exists in the cycle to kind of like turn up the volume and to really wake people up or be dramatic, just as, I mean, we're so exposed, at least in some parts of the world, to what climate change does, specifically with superstorms, right? Like biblical storms or however you would describe it. Like we just had the one in Texas where, the floods were washing away whole families who were just enjoying a holiday and just like feeling that very viscerally as like the power of nature over people. And so that will calm down. It'll change because we're not being shown, our egos aren't being broken in the storm of like, yeah, nature is stronger than the human will or ego. And I think in Yellow Seed, the way that I also want to amplify that is just like we become like flowers or plants versus weather that is catastrophic and dramatic. We become so sensitive because we're like, it's fascinating that like flowers will open when the sun rises and close when the sun sets. Like they're responding to just like temperature and ambience. So just like on such a very minute but grand level. And so we kind of become that sensual in Yellow Seed.
Beautifully, beautifully described. I really like that metaphor. Um, Maybe we can say a few sentences about the blue and the yellow and what does it mean. So just I'll say that, as Lisa was saying earlier, that the solar years, the 13 moon calendar years, are articulated by the same family of tribes or signs: the red moon, the white wizard, the blue storm, and the yellow seed, which are consistently always the same color. So the seed is always yellow, the storm is always blue, the wizard's always white, and the moon is always red. And so as we shift on a daily level or on a annual yearly level between the colors, we're also talking about a shift in the energy form that things are articulating themselves or manifesting themselves in our reality. It's like a really different frequency now. I think for someone that's either not so living their lives with the spiritual, some kind of spiritual pattern they follow, or maybe are just a bit cynical about the possibility of something like this even being connected to reality. It could be quite foreign or maybe even weird to think that the color of a year can actually mean a lot about our real everyday life. Um, but I'd just like to explain in a short way that the blue color is directly connected with the alchemical processes of transformation and real shape shifting, things and processes that we don't necessarily see in our eyes, but we can feel them in our senses, that there's real motion stirring on the inside. And that's why the storm is blue, because it talks about change and movement and transformation and real elements in reality changing the way they are reacting or behaving in the world. And after such a year of so much change, I like to describe it like the storm floods the earth with so much water. So much emotion has been poured out of us in this year, forced out of us, all this denial, all this stuff we've been holding in for who knows how long. And after all this water comes down on the earth and the storm kind of passes, the first thing to arise are the seeds that have been waiting for this, all of this energy. And so it's a very natural process. And the seeds, they represent fruitation, so kind of a results of the process. So when we enter a yellow seed year, we're actually going into a year that we can expect a lot of new signs or new beginnings that are a result of all this storm work or stormy weather processes that we've been through in the previous year. And so the yellow color is about ripening and new beginnings or endings or something completing into its complete form and showing itself in the real life on the face of the earth. Anything you want to add about that?
Yeah, and just like maybe breaking it down, like the origin is that the four colors are the four directions of a medicine wheel. East is red, north is white, the west is blue, and the south is yellow, and that you can ascribe like qualities to that. So I ascribe that fire in the east with the rising sun, that red dawn, bringing the element of fire. And then the north is air or spirit. And then the west ends up being the night sky rising up when the sun sets, that color blue of the cosmos that is illuminated when we're still awake at night. And that there is the dream time or the more abstract and the element water, blue there. So water is also super alchemical. It has all kinds of shapes. And then finally, the yellow in in the south would be just the quality of earth and also our bodies, which are kind of like the practical earth side of our existence. So that yellow seed is very like plant oriented, which plants are very earthy. Seeds are very dependent on earth, so it is a year where we turn toward practical or tangible elements. And, we're not lost in thought, we're not lost in our imagination. The awareness is sort of like what is happening, including what is happening to my body, and not just like, ooh, I have physical problems or solutions I need to apply. It's more like, how do I feel when I move through this world? Like I'm porous and sensitive, and it's not just my body, my spirit is also porous and sensitive. But I do believe and agree that there's this natural arc, and we kind of fall into yellow seed more restfully after being turned up and and energized. Blue Storm is a really energetic experience, and you could feel a little bit also like, oh, I'm not as unstoppable in yellow seed. I am not a force of nature now. I am doing something different.
Yeah, I like that. I connect with that a lot. And I remember in the past when I was observing yellow seed years, I was noticing that in yellow seed years, a lot of new ideas and initiatives arise in the world. It's like we've been through a storm and now we better understand where we are because it kind of spun us and activated all the elements within us and like really put us into the present moment, somehow forcefully even. And now it's like we better understand where we are, and we have all this energy that's gone through us. The blue storm is directly connected to the word energy. It's the one sign or glyph or tribe that's directly connected with this idea of energy. So it brings a lot of energy. The storm, it's energy and movement, dense condensed energy. So we have all this energy and we better understand where we are. And so it's very natural that we have new ideas. Really, it could be brand new. It could show up, from my experience, even out of nowhere, like, wow, how didn't I think of this earlier? But then it's like, oh, I couldn't have thought of this earlier because only now, recently, I just understood this bit of the puzzle, which enabled this idea to formulate in my mind. So it's like really this feeling, from my experience, of freshness, like new. There is new happening right now, and we can rely on this planet and this creation to continually be providing us with new processes, new ideas, um, new things happening that we couldn't expect or anticipate them happening, and they kind of spring out of nowhere in some way, or maybe few people were seeing them coming, but then they came, and it's like, whoa, there's something new happening, and no one saw it coming, or no one, they didn't say on the news this was going to happen, or I didn't hear everybody around me talking about it like this is what's going to happen, but it's new and it's happening right now.
Well, it I'm the worst at predicting what is to come, but I appreciate that. Obviously, like I appreciate what you're saying, and I relate that to how the seed is, it's called the yellow seed, not like yellow tree. It's talking about the first stage of growth in a plant cycle. And it's not just called that. That's the original. These are based on hieroglyphs that were traced back to the original Mayan, you know, holy sites. So I trust that that was why, that the seed, we already know what the tree looks like. So we're like drawn out in our imagination, like this is the beginning of something that will become so great. So I also agree that the new year in a yellow seed year is going to kind of be amplified, like starting a period of growth that is calm and slow compared to the kind of growth of Blue Storm.
And what do you think about the resonant element in this year? How do you imagine, or from your experience from the past, how do you think it can show up in our lives and in the processes we go through in the planet?
Well, I am like a practicing psychic or clairvoyant. So to me, the resonant tone is just like the psychic tone. Like that's when you can really pick up on unspoken energy that just lives in the world, but your intuition is really dialed up. So like sometimes I'm not sure if that's what other people experience because it's a kind of a second skin for who I am, just like I just am always doing that anyway. But like that's a gift, right? A whole year, like we've had a whole year where we're really putting our lives in rhythm and kind of organized, making them steady. Now we get a whole year of being really intuitive And as someone who kind of lives in that realm, I think it's really fun to be able to. It makes life so much more complex and dreamlike, right? When you're
Mm,
like, what? I knew that was happening. I wasn't
mm,
even there, and you
mm,
get a lot of validation in the resonant year or the resonant tone
mm,
that, everyone sort of drops into agreement that we can be resonant, meaning like I hold in my body vibrational energy or I can channel divine information. I can kind of be attuned to what other people are putting out in unspoken ways. So I mean, it's kind of like living as a magician or someone with sixth sense and, psychic superpowers, and that's pretty fun.
I like that. I like that. Um, I can also add to that. I have a bit of foreseeing ability, a bit. Over the past years, I've made some predictions when the years before the years began, only to the for my community, and it ended up being very precise. So I'm kind of starting to lean a bit more naturally on this ability, and um, and yet I don't believe in predicting like specific processes. It's not my thing, but I can foresee new ideas, the form of the yellow seed. So new ideas starting to show up in our consciousness about what's possible for the near and distant future. And although we're already living in a very kind of modernized technological world on one level, we can recognize on the more human, spiritual level that humanity on the whole is still very much engulfed in the old ways of thinking, and especially the systems that run the planet are still very much founded on the old ways of thinking, which are really dissolving in front of our eyes in reality in these times. And so when I connect with the resonant element of this year, I can really see that this year will also not necessarily will be seeing like it's not like a galactic seed year, which is more about like this modeling of the seeds, like how could it be like really in the physical life, but like you said, more on the psychic level, on the consciousness awareness level, like new ideas that are going to be seen in the near and distant future are going to start to show up in our consciousness in this year. And so when I was foreseeing this year coming up, I always like to kind of observe the upcoming year already with the so already when we begin this year, I'm looking at the also into the next year. Where is this going to lead us? So I'm looking at the galactic moon year, which will be after the resonant seed year. I'm thinking, okay, what kind of processes can we go through in the resonant seed year that will lead us to the galactic moon year? Like, why would we need the galactic moon? And I know what that means in some way, the galactic moon, so I can kind of tap into this fine kind of perspective. And it excites me, and I'm sharing this because, like the voice you bring, I also have a voice like this within me saying, this world is doomed. Humans are not developing fast enough in our consciousness to keep up with nature. And although we think we're very advanced because we have these phones and these computers, like most of us have done nothing to make it come into existence beside pay some money.
Mm.
So most humans are not the humans that know how these phones actually work and how it shows that we're such an advanced species. So I have that voice in me that says, nature will take over, and whoever needs to leave this life will leave this life in this process. But at the same time, I hold this spiritual, like optimistic perspective that has been also very much affirmed by observing the 13 moon calendars. I'm enjoying your smile behind in the background. And so this year for me is like very much holding, maybe I would say hope. I'm not relying on it because I'm kind of observing life through what's happening, and the world it is humans, we're doing some awful things to each other and to the earth, like the most in the highest degree we've ever been in this time. I mean, we're creating so much destruction on the planet, and for our own inner worlds, especially where I'm existing in my body right now, in this part of the world. It's absolutely it's so awful. I can't face it day to day and survive at the same time. It's just too awful. But at the same time, they say it's always darkest before the dawn. And I do believe that the resonant seed has a quality of a kind of a dawn because it's like resonating new beginnings, resonating new potentials. And so I have some faith that this year will bring with it also some positive twists that we can't anticipate because our way of seeing the world is doomed, is based on thousands of years of observing, and having history as a record showing us all these processes of death and destruction that have happened to lead us to where we are. And so I'm happy to resonate this kind of a bit of a more hopeful perspective in a way, and to open the possibility for whoever's listening that this year can bring some really positive twists in our personal lives and also on a global level. It doesn't mean the destruction will end. It doesn't mean that our own inner dying will necessarily just disappear and turn into hopefulness, but that it can lead to it at some point in the year that we will feel like new processes that we're seeing and experiences can actually also affect the way we observe ourselves, our lives, and the future in which we are living in. And my intuition tells me you're not making this stuff up. I mean, this is connected to what's happening. But again, I'm happy to be a humble human saying, this is absolutely only the way I see things. And no one listening should necessarily take my perspective as truth unless it really, really, really resonates with you and you can take it and spread it if you
That's
want.
right. That's right. We are offering different visions in the same video. But like, I mean, I'm pretty like transparent about my history. I grew up in a really countercultural um movement, right? Like my parents' generation. And I was like brought up with all this what we call sometimes magical thinking. Like it's going to be amazing. And a lot of them were like high, on not hard drugs, but just like they were informed that everything was totally about to change by kind of a wishful space that comes from, being out of body. So like I just developed the character and the blue storm, no denial, please, of just like, I'm not really seeing it that way. I think that this is a really hard life full of suffering, and it's always been for pockets of the human race. We have the karma of suffering. America and the Middle East were from different places, but this is a country, a place built on genocide and torture and slavery of humans. And it's just really hard to get out from under karma like that. It lives in the atmosphere. And because my children are Native American, I have a really direct personal exposure to what that looks like in family systems, how much suffering can persevere over generations. So my cynicism, as I've already said, is colored by my age, where you're kind of like, I don't see how we get out of this. Um, and just a lot of personal exposure also as a woman, who's been victimized the way women often are. I'm just like, it's really hard to be alive. It's a miracle if we want to keep going, and that there is one way to see that life is going to get better for humans that is really dark, but it's pretty much my position. And it doesn't mean this is happening in the yellow seed year, but just as a counterbalance, because we might have people that listen and they're coming from a place of really hurting and hopelessness. And I speak to you, like I'm right there with you. This is a slog. Um, Dying is also a way to become enlightened because you return to the light. And I've had a close enough, near-death experience to have some exposure where I'm like, oh, wait, that's peaceful and also so expansive. And that we're really locked into human form and human karma in a way that is testing and challenging and super important and miraculous. Like, what even is this? Like, levels of existence that we've created, in human form, and then we evaporate. So I just want to say that that's the analogy I use for time and moving into the future. Changing years, there is a lot of anticipation of newness and what could happen, and that I tend to sit in anything can happen, but it's likely to have storytelling that still feels like suffering, and that and then, the possibility for being released into acceptance with what is. I think that humans, when they created the internet, accelerated life and mental activity so quickly, compared to, like, yes, the Middle Ages had the plague and it couldn't have been worse, like this is nothing like that. But this is very quick change of human experience. And I think, we're ravaged by making that adjustment. So it's kind of like being in an insane asylum because everyone's sort of losing it at the same moment, and you can't find those pockets of really true blue settled teachers. So, with all that said, I want to mute my expectations personally for the year change. I know that we begin a totally new cycle every year. Alon and I made a whole wonderful series about what it feels like to move through the 13 moons of each year. And the magnetic moon that begins the year be brings us new karma, and it's not something we decide. It lands right in our lap, like, oh, I attracted this, and I'm going to be working with it all year long. And so you can pay attention, like, what is the year going to bring by seeing what it delivers right in the first 28 days. I totally want to affirm that historically, yellow seed years are easier than blue storm. But like when Blue Storm is coming,
Yeah,
if we'd sat together a year ago, it'd be like, okay, you guys, it's gonna be crazy.
yeah.
We'll be wild.
Prepare
Hold
for
on.
craziness.
Yeah, hold on. So I
Yeah,
want to say, like, look, you did it. It's gonna be slower and develop a different part of yourself than like survival or, you know, huge adrenaline surges. You get to be more restful and slow and awake to subtlety now,
yeah,
instead of being like in the hand-to-hand combat of like everything being turned up in chaos.
yeah. And at the same time, I'd like to add to that, adding also to what I said earlier, that I can also envision a yellow resonant seed year being a year of like eruptions, like many seeds sprouting at the same time, and it's like little sonic cosmic booms, in different places that could erupt at the same time. I know there's they've been reflecting processes of volcano eruptions coming up on different ways of observing nature and the behavior of animals in America and in different parts of the world. And so these eruptions, they're not just symbolic, over there on that side of the planet. There's been some fire coming out of the earth. These processes, they affect everything. They affect the whole climate, the ecosystem, the behavior of animals. They can definitely and do affect the the form of molecules in the air we breathe. And this could travel on the face of the whole earth over a whole year, in the wind. This is not like just games. This is the real deal. And so maybe I just want to add one small thing about just positioning this year of the Yellow Resonant Seed within the 13-year process of the White Wizard that we began with White Magnetic Wizard 6 years ago. So we're in the larger context of immediate multi-dimensional shifts uh, happening in a sequence of 13 years on a very enhanced level. So how you were describing the internet and the way it has been and still uh, accelerating to a point of absolute ungraspable, like the sound, the speed of light, the speed of sound. We're evolving in such a level that also from a more kind of comforting perspective, after a blue storm year, we could definitely expect that the changes happening in a yellow seed year will not be so all encompassing, shaking every cell of our body, but it will be more like things we can grasp in our consciousness, in our understanding, in our awareness. We could see them happening. It's almost like watching like these videos of a seed sprouting like step by step. So we'll also be able to see this in our eyes, like this leads to this, leads to this, leads to this, and then it's coming, boom, it's happened. Okay, what's happened? Oh, it's just this new first step of a new potential that might not even manifest into a plant, probably not manifest statistically wise, many, even thousands of times more seeds land on the earth in a specific from a specific plant than the ones that actually sprout, and definitely the ones that sprout into a tree. So my name Alon in Hebrew, it literally it means oak tree. So I'm very connected with the oak tree, and I'm surrounded by oak trees in the habitat where I live. So I'm a lot observing the patterns of this tree. There's so many acorns lying around an oak tree, but you don't see any oak trees growing around an oak tree. There's one oak tree putting down all these seeds to the earth for maybe one day if something happens to him. There's all these potentials that might use his infrastructure to sprout. So also for our listeners to maybe I want to kind of comfort you by the fact that also these beginnings that we might see happening, like, oh, a war might just started there and then oops, that didn't become a war. Or things can show up and disappear as quick as they showed up. Like it won't necessarily be like boom, boom everywhere. It only the few, the chosen few that need to really stir things up, we will probably see them moving on the planet in this year and in our lives.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about yellow seed kind of temperaments. I have a daughter who's a yellow seed, so I've known her for 26 years and observed her. And I think that it's really procreative. And I used to be more comfortable talking about like sexuality also changed when we got screens everywhere. People sort of were dealing more with real in IRL in real life. And I think of yellow seed being pretty sensual. So again, when you drop into your body in this coming year, you find out like what the body craves, what you want to give your body, and everyone is going to be in that place. So I think that it's an amazing time to create a child. And in order to create a child, there are certain actions people take. And so whether you're creating a child or not, like sexuality has a place in yellow seed. And that's nice.
It is.
Wanting to, again, when we as humans have all these capabilities. I loved when you said that, like, I didn't create my iPhone. Sure, I can like plink through it and make some calls, but why do I feel like I'm so intelligent when I just basically, a monkey and some brilliant team created this technology? I loved that. And so I think that there is a simplicity that is very pleasing and old-fashioned about yellow seed. Again, like to be stirred by what is nature, the plant part of nature doing, and to kind of live inside a plant for a year. That's going to feel like retro in a certain way and wholesome. And that's something I believe we need or can really look forward to enjoying. Like wanting to be in
Yes.
nature, wanting to be like nature, and not, again, storm is a disruptive part of nature, but seed isn't. Seed is all about bringing nourishment. It is such a fundamental way humans keep themselves going. So to kind of drop into what we primally need, like being that for our human ego and dumbing down our human ego to like, oh wow, I really just need a good meal, it turns out, not all of these extras. I feel like throwing one more thing. I was like, why am I always so cynical? I remember that this, each of the days, again, July 26, 2025, ushering in a new year, is just a day in the Zolkin, so we can look at the astrology of it. And I just want to point out that the year will be guided by Yellow Warrior. And Yellow Warrior is not like, a mass murderer. Yellow Warrior is a very disciplined agent of protection against those who need protection, those who are vulnerable and weak. It is a way of being like a social justice warrior. But, when people are guided by that energy field, by that tribe, they're ready to fight. Like that's the deal is you're prepared for the worst. You're ready to go to war. You're capable of enduring in that. I don't mean that we're going to have a year guided by further war. I mean, potentially, but that's not really what I'm trying to imply. You're going to have a fierceness guiding you that is like fearlessness. But I think that was just one of the things where I'm like, it doesn't feel like we're just dropping into like a field of flowers. There's still plenty of work and perseverance indicated in the astrology of our year. But so it is. That's kind of what I mean. Like we're in a human cycle, just as living sentient beings, where we are in, I think, a reckoning, like we have to face ourselves and what our species is doing to each other and to the planet. And so this is another version of that, but
Yeah,
absolutely going to be more stable in an everyday way.
yeah, yeah. And I really resonate with the warrior as the guide for this year. Also, to context it with the fact, like you said, that this is a daily sign eventually, and we can observe its qualities and kind of project them onto a whole year as a potential. And we're also in the wave spell of the white mirror, and we're in the process of cutting edge truths being exposed through this process. So these seeds, they're not just coming out of nowhere. They're coming from a foundation of, like you say, a reckoning, like this kind of time to stop, cut the bullshit, stop lying to ourselves. This year will bring a lot of, I forget the word right now. We'll be seeing ourselves in new ways, but real ways from the processes of this year. And this will demand us to be very fearless and courageous, to not step back and say, this is too scary for me. I can't deal with this. I mean, some things we can't deal with, but on our personal level, what this year brings to our door front is meant for us. And so I can, as a white mirror, strongly advise whoever is listening to us uh, during the upcoming year, if you are exposed to a part of yourself that threatens you so much on an emotional level or spiritual level or a mental level, it's very much a courageous act to ask for assistance and help from people that you recognize can help you process these truths, because this is hard. I mean, where I'm living right now, it's happening in a very intense way in the Middle East and Israel. And this is like the and one of the epicenters of the planet where these processes of the worlds clashing are really showing up in full and in their full glory, and they're full and all their colors, like crazy flowers of we could metaphor it in many different ways. But this is a very intense process that we're going through, and I'm sure these eruptions that here they don't show up as physical volcanoes, but more like eruptions of cultures clashing and eruptions of of mindsets and ideologies and religious patterns that have been brewing up on this planet for centuries. This is a very intense process, and I strongly advise, again, whoever's listening to us, to consider the fact that if you're not having some form of support to go through these processes, this would be a really good time to sprout that inner seed of courage and ask for the support you need, because this is not meant for one to battle on our own. This is not the time to battle. I mean, our demons, we meet eventually, each one of us, when we wake up first thing in the morning, or when the sun comes down and we're alone at night at home and we have to face the things we fear facing and the pain we carry. But this can definitely be a time of in this manner, of a positive potential of kind of connecting our roots a bit more tightly. Like the seeds, they hold on to something. They don't just sprout out of the air into the air. They're holding on to some piece of earth and making that courageous step, knowing that statistically they're not meant to survive. Really, very few survive from the seed batch of every cycle. So,
I raise my hand. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, well, I mean, I don't want I'm hoping that people that listen, you hear it on all the different levels. Like they say, take what you need and leave the rest. But I think it's important for maybe the people that have more exposure to the calendar who might be tuning in to just absolutely recognize every Zolkin day is in service to the wave spell that it lives within. So we don't generally have to say, hey, it's a yellow resonant seed year, the seventh day of the white mirror wave spell. Like that becomes complicated for beginners who are coming to this new idea of a different calendar. But those of you who know the calendar, we can't, like I said, Alon doesn't get his own year as a white mirror, whereas I do as a blue storm. But this year will be very strong for a white mirror person because of the wave spell holding the day is going to hover around the energy of the year. And that's for everyone who, I mean, a cornerstone of why I teach and make myself public is not because I am pro Mayan sacrifice rituals of death, but because I think that the Maya do not get any place in the world pantheon of spirituality because they did. It's too distasteful. And there's so much hypocrisy about that because Catholics killed a bunch, I mean, everyone kills in the name of religion. So the spirituality that comes out of Central America is so profound. That's like my life's work to experience it and share it. But I know that that thing of white mirror representing like a way of articulating a ritual day where someone's life is given toward the heaven, I see it as so they can join the luminaries in heaven, sort of like levitate and be lifted out of this mortal coil into something divine. Not something I would ever do, right? But just as a concept, I think it's illustrating freedom. And it's terrifying to pass from life to death, but death, the afterlife, is harmony. So, anyway, with all that said, this year can be challenging because we are going to continue to face how we individually and collectively are making sacrifices. And we could go another hour and we won't about how we've already been living that. This is not new. Like what I'm going to learn about, the feeling of sacrifice, it's in the water that we drink. We are in the reckoning, I think, is where humans get to feel like we have all this control. Oh, except over here where there's a war now. Oh, except over here, like in the United States where we have malevolent people dictating our policies for government and such, rewriting our lives backward into a dark age. Like these are terrible feelings to endure for a human being who's awake to that. Every one of us has individual sacrifice hovering in our lives where we feel loss and disappointment, a lack of control, extreme anxiety about what's next. So I don't want to end with that big bummer, but I just feel like please hear me and the love in my heart for every listener. This is a psychic message to you as you come to this video. Like, I care deeply, as Alon just did, that you not take it personally if you have disappointments or setbacks and you can't control your outcome to make it all better. It is so not you. It's the water we're swimming in. And there are all these ways to endure discomfort. And that's why I teach and try to offer podcasts that are pretty regular so that you have like a rail to hold on to as you move through your own difficult times or the ones that come collectively. It can be explained through astrology, but the astrology we're living in is intense right now.
Yes, that was beautifully said, and thank you for this message, the way you put it exactly. And I think on this note, I'll just remind our listeners that both you and I offer this kind of support that we speak about through the Mayan lens, but not only. We use a variety of tools, holistic tools that can also touch very deep into the emotional aspect of a process, but also into the mental and also into the ancestral and also into the cosmic and energetic. So we are definitely accessible and available to support you. Our details
And
in the
We're both
description.
really affordable. We're affordable people so that it
Yeah,
isn't a sacrifice
approachable.
for you to get support. Yeah, like that's an important facet. Like it's really available because it's deserved for anyone who needs it.
Yes. And of course, please, if you have any questions, feel free to comment in the comments of this video, and I will definitely be looking at them. Maybe you will too, and answering questions that might come up. And also tell you guys that we are definitely intending on continuing this mutual teaching and experience of bouncing off our each other's wisdoms and sharing this gift we've been given through the internet on the other sides of the planet, and continue to sharing with you about natural time and Mayan wisdom. So stay tuned with us, subscribe to this channel, and feel free to reach out if you have any specific questions. And I thank you so much, Lisa. It's already been such an amazing journey to be connecting with you regularly and sharing wisdom and learning from your experience and perspective. And I can wish you and bless you that this year brings with it potentials that you've been praying and wishing for in your own personal life to manifest and show and start showing up, or not necessarily manifesting and showing up, but the way for them to manifest, to show up. And yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. He always holds the space for us guys. He is the creator here. So I feel so honored that I just get to like turn on a button and we're together. So thank you. And thank you for the listener viewers, because this is for you.
Yes, thank you so much for being with us and enabling us to give our gifts and share our wisdom. And we will definitely be seeing you again soon.
That's right.